Hi everyone, and welcome to another Future Design Forum 10-minute fireside Q&A session with myself, Andy Smith of TDA Creative, the design, tech and product talent agency. And I'm delighted today to be joined by David Marro, who's currently VP of Design at Paramount in New York. David, thank you so much for joining us. I do appreciate it.
Hey, Andy, thank you. Very, very, very cool to be here and excited to have the conversation with you.
Great stuff. Well, look, before we kind of fire into the questions, would you mind giving us a little brief background on yourself and your kind of journey to your current role at Paramount?
Sure. Yeah. So, as you said, I'm at Paramount Plus right now. Been here a little over a year on this team as the VP of product design for monetization. Been with the company for around 8 years. Previously was the head of product and product design and UX for Showtime streaming apps.
Yeah, great.
I've been in this career for, as I like to say, since last century, about 25 years now, all at media companies, including Discovery, Disney, Nickelodeon, and Marvel.
You've covered
And
most of it, haven't you?
yeah,
The streaming front.
yeah, so streaming has been, interesting and really, even though they've all been media companies, the way that the industry, the technology, the craft of UX and product development has changed and evolved and been disrupted over and over again has been a really interesting transition throughout that time.
Yeah. And whilst it's not one of our questions we've got written down, do you see much change in that industry in the near future? You know, our behaviors as consumers is just insatiable, right?
Yeah, I mean, dramatic change. I mean, it's been a shifting paradigm, for the past decade, at
Yeah.
least. Streaming is in a very interesting place. And right now there's a lot of consolidation happening. I've always loved it because it's an industry that needs to reinvent itself from time to time, and that's what makes it challenging, but also very exciting. And I see that continuing for sure as we
Brilliant.
move.
Well, as a consumer, I look forward to seeing that progress for sure.
Yeah.
And in terms of design leadership, then, from your experience gained in the different environments, can you give us perhaps 3 tips for those aspiring design leaders out there that you've learned along the way?
Yeah, sure. I would say the first one is to be clear about why you want to make that transition, because it's not an easy transition, and I've certainly seen very talented designers struggle with it.
Yeah.
It really requires, a shift in your mindset and a little bit of letting go, because you come into this because you love the craft, and as you make that transition, you sort of move from the what we're doing to the how we're doing it to the why.
Mm,
Um, and I think it's important to understand where you are in that transition because it's not a light switch. And so you will evolve over time. And at first you will struggle to let go of the pixels, and the craft. And then eventually you make the transition from thinking about how we're getting things done on a day-to-day basis to like where we're going in the future and
yeah.
where we should be going. So I think that's key to know why and what what you're most interested in. The second thing I think is to understand that you set the tone for the team, and this is something that again comes with sort of maturity is like realizing that the way you show up is going to reflect in the team. So if the two most valuable things you can provide as you advance in your career is probably perspective and poise, I would say. And like we just talked about, change is a constant, not only in this
Yeah.
industry, but it feels like everywhere right now. So like managing that change and navigating the team through some of that change is critical. Um, and part of that, I think, is also, setting the tone in other ways, like, actively seeking out perspectives that are different from yours.
Great.
Um, and actively working to like disprove your own kind of hypothesis. It sets the tone for the team to kind of do a little bit of the same.
I like that kind of creative out of the box thinking, right? Not thinking
Yeah,
there's one rule for everyone. Okay.
yeah,
And I guess part of that design leadership and understanding why you want to be a design leader brings in that challenge of how you help to elevate or position design, or perhaps where design should be positioned within an organization. What are your thoughts around that one?
so I think, when people talk about elevating design within the organization or design having a seat at the table, which is a phrase I don't love, but that idea, right? I think
Yeah.
that the most important thing you can do is actively do the work to tie your design thinking back to the business goals and user goals, right? And I think as a design leader, that's where you can have the most impact because it's not something young designers can do intuitively, right? And I think it's not important only to do that work, but to show that work, because that's how you indicate that design is not really just cosmetic. It's about solving problems, solving real problems for users. Tie it to the OKRs, tie it to the KPIs, look for data that it can inform your decisions,
Mm.
that sort of thing. And then try to show the impact it's having and show it to people outside the design team and also the designers on the team, because it's important for them to understand how their work is tied to the progressing the business.
Great, great. And talking of designers on your team or when you're hiring for design in your team, always interested because obviously as someone who works in talent myself, and we present to designers all the time and help advise them. How do you like seeing work presented to you from either a portfolio perspective, pre-interview or during interview?
Hmm. It's a good question. And I think there are two things I look for, and they're kind of in line with the stuff we've already talked about, which is I'm more interested in hearing a designer articulate their design thinking and their rationale behind their design decisions, as I want to see how they think.
Yeah,
It's not, I'm not as interested in the specific solution. Um, so I think that's key. And then I want to understand along with that they understand the business, the system they're designing in, the constraints of that system, and the users they're designing for. And then the second thing is I really like to probe for somebody to show multiple solutions to a single problem, because I
like it.
think for designers it's important that they don't fall in love with their first idea, and that they can. One of my favorite quotes about design is, "If you can only see one solution, you don't really understand the problem."
I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
And I guess when you're designing for any particular product, it's not one shoe fits all, right? Tech, product, different areas are going to see different solutions. So you've got to present different iterations.
Yeah, and I feel like one of the pitfalls, right, people fall into, not just in product design, but in general, is trying to sort of dogmatically apply the same tools or processes or whatever to anything. And it's like the old Bruce Lee, like, be like water, right? Like water takes the shape of whatever. Like,
Yeah,
it may sound a little cliche, but I find it helpful to think that way, because
I like that.
we've done things in certain teams that worked. And then I've come onto different teams that were structured very different way with very different processes. And you can't hammer that square, peg into that round hole. You have to think about how I can adapt what we've done successfully in the past to fit the needs of this particular team.
Very good. Very good. And the big question, it's very wide scoping, but what do you love most about being a design leader?
I think, the thing that I like most about it is the broad impact you can have, right? Like, I came into this like every other designer, with love for the craft. I love the craft. I loved getting lost in pixels for days at a time, and producing something that a user can interact with and have a journey
Yeah,
with, um, and an experience that was individual and unique. And as you progress, you kind of have to let go of that a little bit, but you can have a broader impact, not just on the product and the business, but even on the people. Like, that's one of the things, like, when I think about it, and I'm getting a little older now, right? I think about when I look back on all of this, um, it will be the relationships that you've developed with people, and the idea that, at the end of the day, you can help solve problems that make not just users, but even your colleagues and stakeholders' lives a little better,
yeah,
enrich them a little bit on a day-to-day basis.
yeah. And that I guess that challenge is always there, right? Isn't it? And that opportunity to get
Yeah,
that satisfaction as well.
yeah.
That's great. And to finish off, my always slightly left field question, I'm putting you on the spot, but can you tell us one thing that few people might know about you, that many people
That's
will know soon?
That's a hard one. That's a hard one. Um, Maybe a little bit of a cop out, but I'll stick with the career and design. I when I graduated high school, I had no idea what I wanted to do, and
Right.
art school was not even in my mind, right? And I had drawn a lot as a kid. And so somebody was like, well, you should think about art school. And I was like, art school? Not, how am I going to make a living doing that? You know? And they were like, oh, it's this thing, graphic design. And this is like 90s, like mid
Yeah, yeah.
90s. So the internet was just becoming a thing. I didn't have an email address. I had never even really used a computer, right? Until my senior year of college. And even as I was graduating college, I had no idea what I was going to do. And it wasn't until I got into this one Photoshop class, finally used a computer, and it was kind of like an aha moment. And then this professor showed us Director, Macromedia at the time, which Adobe
I
bought out.
remember.
And you could write code and people could interact with it and have different experiences. And, and I was like, that was my real aha moment where I was like, oh, I see the potential in this.
Yeah,
So I guess that's one thing is like, to be honest, here I am 25 years later. And at the time, I had no idea. And I have I have a son who's about to go off to college. My kids are older now.
yeah,
And I try to tell them, look, it's okay if you don't know. Because no one knows at your age, but you'll figure it out.
yeah. That's nice. We never quite know how that journey starts, right? Some people are very clear on that path, aren't
Yeah.
they?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
others fall into it. That's
I've always
good.
been envious of those people, but now I also see that there's more than one path.
Well, talking of your kids, I know one's out there cooking you a bacon sandwich right now, so you can
That's right.
you can
No,
go
not
and
my babies. We've been lucky. The fire alarm hasn't gone off through this.
no, that's right, that's right. Never say never. But David, thank you for your time of joining us. Really, really good fun,
Thanks.
insightful, and a great chat. I look forward to seeing you further on our future design TDA talks.
Sounds good. Thanks, Andy. I really appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
All right, take care.